Well, you know what they say in Brooklyn. Early to bed, early to catch the worm. Or is it the bagel?
On January 1st of 2025, Joey Badass made his position clear as claiming the throne as the King of New York while also challenging the West Coast. And the way he sees it is that it was playful competition and a lot of the West Coast rose up to the occasion. Now, when it comes to this whole rap beef, there's definitely a lot of people who say that it was good for the genre, it was good for hip hop. It's in the spirit of competition. You've got people on one side saying that this was, bringing lyricism back to the forefront while on the other side, you have people such as myself saying that this beef wasn't just pointless, but it really didn't move the needle the way they say it would. So after this beef ended, I think a couple months back, I don't feel the needle moving. And so Joey Badass has a new album out called Lonely at the Top, and I want to go through it track by track, so that way I can put into context its placement, not just on Joey's discography or in his placement as I don't want to just go over it in terms of his discography. I also want to talk about where it lands in the context post beef. So, without further ado, let's get started. We open up the intro with the song Dark Aura featuring a bright choral arrangement along with a thick bass line. Here we get references to Juice, the 1992 film starring Tupac Shakur and Grandmaster Flash, as a shout out to New York City staples with bars such as, "Please don't push me cause I'm close to the edge, gotta know the ledge, knowledge is my power, that's what my OG said." In the back of my mind, I can't help but feel that this is Joey's way of addressing the West Coast as a way of reminding them that Tupac, who acted in Juice, was born indeed in Manhattan. Then we get this bar on the second half of the song where Joey intensifies his vocal performance by stating, "I don't take offense if it ain't directly addressed. They try to push my buttons but I ain't even pressed." Which we'll get back to in a bit because it's important to bring up later. It's funny how he mentioned this while also not addressing the West Coast directly.
I'm back. Big Swank White and all that.
Swank White features a gorgeous, upbeat vintage sample with lush violins and a groovy bass line. Something about this track induces a sense of childlike wonder, like your first day of school, not knowing what the year holds, and it fills you up with a sense of whimsy and wonder that a child only experiences at least once in their lifetime. Wait. What did he say? Pockets on Blueface, neck hitting like Krishan Rock. Alright, in my personal opinion, I feel like this would have been a far more appropriate opener, especially Joey's opening line being, "I'm back," exclaimed in a gleeful way. I really do think that this should have been the opener. It's far more uplifting and is more engaging to me as a listener as I listen to it, especially with bars like, "I'm so fly you couldn't reach these heights unless you find God." Woo! That's a great double entendre that would also call upon the feature of the fly god himself, West Side Gun, with his high-pitched vocal delivery giving us lyrics of opulence like, "Show my face, kiss my pinky ring, I'm the opulent." Not gonna lie, I always get hyped whenever I hear West Side Gun, and I got so excited I just ended up doing the Griselda ad-libs. It's always a lot of fun hearing Gun on this stuff. Now these next three tracks are kind of weird. They're all dance tracks. What's going on here? Super Flea, High Roller, and Ready to Love. I think if I had to go from best to worst, it would be Super Flea at 1, High Roller at 2, and Ready to Love at 3. I do quite like Super Flea, as it is the best out of the three dance tracks. It features these buzzing synths and heavy 808 kicks that remind me of a block party from the 2000s. I don't know why my mind went to those, but for some reason I had a tad bit of nostalgia for those types of sounds. And while I think that Joey isn't exactly in his element on this track, I do really fuck with one of the bars. How Them Diamonds Cut on a Wrist, that's a suicide watch. Oh my god! And Bryce Steve's part on the chorus. Hot Dog, Walk a Sucker Like a Vet. That shit was hard. Next was High Roller, which A$AP Ferg was the best part of the track. When it cuts into his Jamaican patois and rapped along the signature of the beat, God, that's always so fucking satisfying to hear. And finally, Ready to Love. The song has a Ty Dolla $ign feature, which to me didn't really save the track. Yeah, I didn't like this song. There's a term that was coined by the rap critic that describes this type of track. I believe he called it the Thugs Need Love 2 song. That's what this song reminded me of. A song from the 2000s that felt like a record executive obligation to make a love song for the ladies. It's awkward, it's forced, and doesn't really sound all that natural for Joey. Now, it's at this point in the album I didn't really hear much about the West Coast beef being talked about. I feel like after getting such a key victory against that many rappers, you'd think that he'd be reflecting, celebrating, and talking about the beef throughout this album, but no. It all feels like he's just kind of doing different stuff separate from the beef just to see if he could do it. Like, see, he can do dance tracks, which, okay, but I could take or leave, to be honest. Despite my initial enjoyment of them, and as I listen to these tracks, I personally wouldn't really say I prefer Joey to be on them. Not to say he sounds terrible, but to say that it's just not his forte. Like, he just sounds I just think it sounds awkward for him to attempt the poppier cuts as opposed to his more boom bap cuts.
Anything you need and got it.
I heard her ex acting like a bitch Mrs. Doubtfire. What? I mean, yeah, it's like, I get it, but BK's Finest immediately picks the quality back up tenfold. I think Joey's just much better and should stay in this lane than in the dance lane, as this is a posse cut featuring CJ Fly, Rome Streets, and Kite Cash. I love the turntable chorus, the tributes to Brooklyn, and some great bars such as keep a hammer and wrench so all you broke motherfuckers get dismantled and fixed. I watered my money trees cause I plant to be rich. You think you invincible, but I should have known you are marked. Oh no! The Kai Cash feature was my favorite one. I ain't gonna lie, man. The next three cuts are Underwater, 3 Feet Away, and Speeding Through the Rain, which are introspective cuts that I think tackle his mental health in 3 ways. On Underwater, we have a smooth jazz, almost Muzak-like sample with a droning ambient passage in the background that give the feeling like you're underwater. And the way Joey raps feels like he's confronting his issues, whereas on 3 Feet Away, it feels more like he's showing a vulnerable side to him. Granted, I'm not really sure about his vocal delivery here because he sounds a little too much like Drake. But then he does hit us with this line. Count me out, but I know I'm chosen. Can't be a swimming pool, I'm in the ocean. Referencing Kendrick's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, as well as Good Kid, Mad City, both of which he brings together as a reference to his mental health and his sobriety, which I think is clever. I just love the way that rappers tend to combine references and manage to make them fit within one bar. It gives the listener the ability to listen to as many interpolations of those lines as humanly possible, and I think just makes for a more fulfilling listen. And it definitely counts when you have as many quality tracks as possible, especially with bars like, okay, my mind is like a web browser, got way too many tabs open. I get what he's saying, but it's a bit much. And finally, we get Speeding Through the Rain. Joey masterfully uses car metaphors as a way to express his difficulty navigating through life with his mental health. The booming drums and a floating flute coast their way through the track as it deals with the same subject matter, only I feel that this talks about these things in a retrospective and kind of displays the last 2 tracks as 2 sides of the same coin, where here it feels like the person holding the coin, if that makes sense. Your body is a vehicle, Satan trying to pimp the ride, devils want to get inside and drive you out your fucking mind. Top 2 bars on this whole album. We get Still, which features these dramatic arpeggiated pianos with a harmonious droning progression. This song features Ab-Soul and Rhapsody, the former of which delivers an amazing bar. Doing this shit blindfolded, stare in the mirror, can't even look myself in the eye, I don't even know how I look. Yeah, it's bars like these that make me love lyricism in hip-hop. This is in reference to Ab-Soul's mental state when dealing with his blindness that came about as a result of having Steven Johnson syndrome. There's such a powerful layer to this bar that is awe-inspiring and gives you perspective as to why Kendrick always saw Soul as the rapper he aspired to be. This next bar, I'm not sure if this was foreshadowing of Ab-Soul's feature, but if it is, great foreshadowing on his part. But I don't need a pen, I see the writings on the wall, call it superstition, I got that Stevie vision. The only downside to this track is that I wish Rhapsody gave us more than just a chorus on here. I wish he could also provide some bars, but as the song stands as a whole, it was pretty great. We finally close up shop with the title track, which gives us a sublime jazz sample with piano keys and saxophone. I feel like there's not much else to say about this track. It wraps it up decently enough, though I will say I do wish this wasn't the closer. I feel like Dark Aura would have done the job way better, but that's just how I feel. Overall, I thought the album was fine in terms of like what it was trying to accomplish here. I think it's good if you don't pay attention to the beef and just pay attention to just Joey Badass's overall artistry, right? And the reason I say this is because the tracks on here sound way better than any of the stuff that I heard from the feud against the West Coast. There are moments that I do feel sour the album for me as a result of the fact that he just came up out of a beef and he delivers an album that, while it's better than the tracks he's delivered against the West Coast, it doesn't really fully encapsulate Joey's full capacity as an artist. Don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? There are certainly key moments on this album that had me enjoying myself quite a bit. It's just that in comparison to like 1999, 2000, and All American Badass, it doesn't really hold up a candle to those particular projects, and I think it was because of Joey's decision to battle the West Coast. In The Breakfast Club, he stated that he was mainly trying to start up some friendly competition, which is cool and all, but nobody really gave it their all. Not the West Coast, not him, and I think it's because people were so hyper fixated on how this would look on their hip-hop resume and not as much on how this would look in the long game. Because these are not their best tracks that showcase their true potential as artists, I feel like we're not gonna remember much of these tracks aside from the fact that, oh, okay, well, a rap beef happened and Joey Badass won, so that would mainly be the highlight. I think in terms of the material concerning the beef, it doesn't really, there's nothing to really say aside from the West Coast got their asses handed to them, not necessarily because Joey was like such an elite lyricist that he held his own. It was more like the West Coast just constantly kept tripping over itself, and as a result costed them a lot. Looking back, as I listened to those beef tracks, I didn't feel anything the more I listened. Mainly because I feel like everyone was just rushing out to get their tracks out there as opposed to taking the time to write some really cutting edge music. Remember when I said there were people who loved this beef because it brought attention back to the spirit of competition? That's cool, but here's the thing. The competition has to be good, and it wasn't. And it's not me wanting people to write expose tracks like Kendrick did with Meet the Grams. I just want them to focus on the more creative parts of their brains and really push, like, not just the competitive nature of hip-hop, but the artistry. You know, just push that to the next level. Whether it be ciphers, whether it be full-length projects, whether it be the lyrics, whether it be just anything. But none of that really ever happened. I wish people would focus more on making their next project being more creative than the last, as opposed to just writing bars for the sake of writing bars, and bars that only, like, people who are hardcore lyrical fanatics would love. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it should still be celebrated. It's just, as someone who wants the whole package concerning hip-hop, I didn't think this was that engaging. I didn't love it, to be perfectly honest. The stakes of that particular beef were so low that they practically didn't mean anything. And aside from Joey never really pushing his pen and the West Coast humiliating themselves with subpar performances and bars, like Daylight pretty much ended his run with, you know, trying to contextualize the Steez bars, you know, talking about his suicide. Rayvon being a Tory Lanez truther, Hit a J3 delivering some shit, Reason. Who asked for all these motherfuckers to jump in and not deliver their best? It felt like they were waiting for Joey to respond to each one of them individually, but not so. As a result, I feel like the beef ended up marring the quality of Joey's new project. And that's why I think the beef overall was more of a hindrance as opposed to a push forward, because it impacted the quality of almost everyone involved, Joey included. I also want to address the album cover as well. The album cover looks abstract, like we were gonna get something more experimental from Joey this time around, but the music itself didn't really reflect that. I'm of the opinion that the album art should at least reflect the music somewhat, good or bad, and this album art just doesn't reflect the musical product overall. Now, I just don't feel like this album art, especially with the beef, it kind of painted my view of the album art less as an expressive, abstract piece of art, and now a rushed product that looks like lazy watercolor. I mean, like I said, if you don't, you know, pay attention to the beef, and just focus on the artistry of Joey Badass, it's a good album. The album pays a lot of homages to New York, but I don't think it has nearly like that serious unifying factor as much as LA does, because LA is a lot more unified. I don't really feel like I know much about the city on this album aside from some street names, building references, rap references, some New York isms from Joey and company. That's about it. And that may sound like a lot, but they were pretty sparse and were just kind of used to elevate the bars as opposed to like giving me like deep knowledge about New York City herself. You know what I mean? I personally would like an album from Joey that is a bit more abstract, like a drumless album, kind of like on the level of a Ka. I do genuinely want to hear more about New York, but in a way where it talks about it in the grander context of hip-hop and not just these little crumbs of granular detail to bolster the rapping and lyricism. I love the noir-ish jazz samples and the boom bap traditional hip-hop style, but I think they'd sound cooler if they didn't have boom bap on it. And Joey was just kind of testing out different flows and subject matter. And, you know, I got that from Swank White, Underwater, Lonely at the Top, Speeding Through the Rain, and Dark Aura. What I'm saying makes it look like I hate this album, and I really don't. I still really like it. I still think it's fine. But what I'm saying is that the beef kind of took away from the final product's full potential, you know? I think it would be better to find competition in hip-hop through making amazing music and moments in time like ciphers, rap battle back and forths, and not just individual one shot at a time diss tracks that not only lack punch but also would immediately become irrelevant in the long run. We gotta treat tracks like we have a limited amount of ammunition as opposed to an abundance of it, because everybody ran out quickly and everyone just kind of had to go home and everybody kind of looked pretty goofy, and as a result we have an album that, while not bad, not terrible, it wasn't great either, and I think doesn't hold a candle to Joey's earlier work. That's about all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching. What do you guys think of this album? What do you guys think of the rap beef? I'm curious to know about your opinions, thoughts, concerns, sorrows, woes in the comments. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't. I'm not your mom.